All right, so question 3-68. When multiplying decimals, how do you know where to place the decimal point? Think about this as you do problems A through D below. So the first thing it wants us to do in A is write two equations for multiplying 0.3 times 0.16, or 3/10 times 1600ths. One equation should express the factors and products using decimals, and one using fractions. All right, well, if we were going to write an equation for this, the first one as a decimal is pretty much what they have, 0.3 times 0.16. So there's my decimal equation equals, and when we multiply that out, we'll get an answer. And the other one wants us using fractions. Well, as a fraction, this would be 3/10. So here is my other equation if I want to write as a fraction. So I would have 3/10 times, this is 1600ths because it's tenths hundredths. So there is 1600ths equals, and then we would do the math and we would get an answer. All right, so there's part A. In part B, in part A, you multiply tenths by hundredths to get thousands. So if we were to really multiply this out, so do a little bit of work over here. Let's see, 0.16 times 0.3. When I multiply this, I get 18, carry a 1. 3 times 1 is 3, plus 1 is 4. Now notice my problem. I have two decimal places up here, one decimal place here. So I got to slide my decimal. I have three total decimal places, so I slide my decimal to the left 3 spots. 1, 2, and I need a 0 for a placeholder. Now notice this is 48 thousandths because we've got tenths, hundredths, thousandths. So this is 48 thousandths. Excuse my bad writing with this, but that is 48 thousandths. Now, if I were to do this, 3 times 16 is 48. So that would be 48 on top over 10 times 100. Well, 1 times 1 is 1. Then 3 decimal places. Notice what we get. We get 48 thousandths. Same thing we had here, 48 thousandths, because we have tenths, hundredths, thousandths. So notice how these two are related, okay? We got thousands because we multiplied 10 times 100, which is 1,000. Here, when we multiply the decimals, our last thing is in the thousandth spot. So the question wants to know, do you always get thousands if you multiply a tenths times a hundredths? And the answer is yes, because if I were to multiply 10 tenths times hundredths, I'll always get 1,000 in the bottom. What do you get if you multiply tenths by tenths? So no matter what, if I multiply some type of fraction that has a 10 in the bottom by another tenths, so there'll be another 10 in the bottom, well, guess what? I will always get something that's in the hundreds, because look what happens here on the bottom. So let's say we had 7/10 times 5/10. Well, my answer would be 35 hundredths. So 7/10 times 5/10, our answer is going to be in the hundreds. And it should be, because look, we have 2 decimal places. So when I get an answer, we're going to also have 2 decimal places. So we're going to get hundreds when I do a tenths by tenths. All right, next thing they want to know is, what would we get if we were to multiply hundredths by hundredths? All right, well, no matter what the fraction was, no matter what's on top, we're going to multiply hundredths times hundredths. And the numbers on top don't matter. But when I multiply this out, I would have a 1 followed by 4 zeros. 1, 2, 3, 4. So my answer would be 10 thousandths. Let's just say we have 7 hundredths times 5 hundredths. Well, as decimals, this is what it would look like. 7 hundredths is this, 7 hundredths, times 5 hundredths would be this. And if you multiply it, well, look what we've got. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4 decimal places. So we'd have 1, 2, 3, 4 decimal places. My decimal, make it a different color. So let's say my decimal's right here. We'd have 4 places. Well, tenths, hundredths, thousandths, 10,000ths, just like we would have gotten here. So hopefully this makes a little bit of sense, but they want you to kind of connect and see how, the place value has something to do with how many decimal places we would have. We kind of show that with our fractions. Describe a shortcut for locating the decimal and point in the answer to a problem. Well, the shortcut is this. Count up how many decimal places you have total in the problem. So like this one we had 2 on top, 1 on the bottom, so we had 3. So then we just move it back 3 to the left. So that's the shortcut that they're talking about.